Morning, YouTube. Hello, App-Driven Guy. I am making a second video in my series for mentoring Uber and Lyft. This is regarding surge chasing and chasing the heat maps for Primetime. I'll try to reference Primetime as PT from here on out through the video to save time. This is a very touchy subject because surge is one of those things for new drivers that can just drive you crazy and make you want to give up sometimes. Surge basically is determined by supply and demand. There's no timing with surge. There is certain times that surge will be guaranteed to develop. That'll be around bar closing time, rush hour, and if there are certain events going on in your town, you're going to get a surge at the time those events let out, and before those events start, you will have a surge for a certain amount of time. None of them are perfect science, except bar closing really can be a perfect science. In your town, depending on when the bars close, you can get a ride generally about... it's different for every town, but it's usually about 10 to 8 minutes, somewhere in there, before the bars close. You're going to have a really heavy surge, and it's best to clock in, keep off of your app until you get into a surge, and then clock into your app right when you're in the eye of the surge, about 8 to 10 minutes before bar closing time. But that's the only one I would say that's really predictable and that you can nail just like that. Okay, so the rest of the video I'm going to dedicate to what to do when you see a surge developing and prime time blowing up on Lyft. So with the surges with Uber, this is basically 3 stages of a surge. Okay, you have the first stage, which is the surge development. So during this stage, you're going to see on your map, you'll see nothing, and then you'll see a small area starting to turn yellow. Some areas are different, the way their Uber maps are set up. I'm talking about Portland, Oregon. We have little hexagons that show up, all little hexagons all stacked next to each other. So when you see a bunch of yellow developing, that means there is a surge starting. So if you're lucky enough to see your map when there's yellow just starting to pop up, and you're within about 10 minutes of that yellow zone, you're safe to go ahead and start heading over that way. I would leave the app on, because if you're going to get any orders in the meantime while you're heading over there, I would suggest just taking those orders instead of crossing your fingers and hoping that the surge is going to work out. Okay, so there's the second stage of a surge, which is when it's peaking, basically. So you have the development phase, which is when you see the little yellow developing, and then it quickly turns into, maybe after about 2 or 3 minutes, it turns into more yellow, like a wider area of yellow with some red in it. And so that's the development stage still. That's the beginning phase, the development stage. So the second stage is your peak stage, where you have that dark red area that's sustained for a certain amount of time. So that's going to be your peak period of the surge. During the peak, I would say only if you're about within 5 minutes of that peak that you would want to actually chase into the eye of that storm. Okay, so if you're within about 5 minutes of the eye of the storm, I would say go for it, head into that eye of the storm, and keep your fingers crossed, because you never know what's going to happen with a surge. You got to remember that while a surge means demand is high, okay, there's people demanding rides, but there's not enough drivers. That's what drives a surge. But just because you're in the middle of a surge in a red zone doesn't mean you're going to get a ride, because those people on their app are seeing that their ride is going to cost 3 times as much, so they're hesitant to order. They're thinking of other ways to get where they need to go. They're sitting there going, maybe I could just ride my bike, maybe I could get on the bus, other things like that. So during that peak phase of the surge, that's when it's the most difficult sometimes to catch a ride, and it's most stressful because you're sitting there chasing around. The eye of the storm is moving just a little bit. If you watch your map, you'll see it higher here, and then it'll be higher here for a minute. But that's all really small stuff. The best thing you can do during the eye of the storm surge, if you're there, is to post up by a bar or a hotel and just wait. You know, that's the best thing you can do. If you go chasing it around, you're just going to be like 3 minutes later, oh, it's over here. Oh man, I lost it. No, man, this is crap. You know, you'll find yourself doing that. So it's really stressful. So if you find yourself, if you're near the eye of the storm, just get as close as you can to it, find a good bar or somewhere there's a lot of people, and just hope for the best. Now, having said that, the really good thing that you can do is you need to have the Uber rider app on your phone, and also the Uber partner app. So you have your Uber partner app open, then you switch over to the Uber rider app, and you look for where there's other drivers. You can move your pin around, it'll show you where there's drivers nearby. And if you're sitting on top of 3 other drivers, move over 10 blocks, you know, and then you won't be on top of those other drivers. Your chances of getting the ride are that much higher. And then there is the third stage of an Uber surge, which is the decreasing stage, you know, the ending of a surge. And excuse me, this is the part of the surge that you get to where if you haven't gotten a ride yet, you're starting to go, man, what the heck happened? I'm in this surge and nothing happened. And that's because riders know how surges work too. They know that they can watch the surge, and after a while it's going to go away. You know, they're not going to have that high fee anymore if they order their ride. So they're going to wait a few minutes, and then they'll order during the decreasing phase, or they'll just wait until it gets back to regular price. So you might find yourself beating your head against a wall going, why is nothing happening? Why did I chase this surge? But that's it. If you don't chase it, then that's your best course of action. The best way to get surge orders is to be lucky enough to find yourself in a surge. And it happens. It'll just happen naturally with the tide of the way orders work. You'll just find yourself in a surge at some point. And then, like I said, you know, kind of use those as a base guideline. If you see a surge developing, head towards it. In the early stage, if it's already developed and huge, I would say if you're within 5 minutes, chase it. If it's decreasing and going away, there's no point in heading towards that area. It's only going to be just regular chances of getting an order. So now, if you're looking at Primetime's a little bit different, okay? Because the surge for Uber is like real time, like you're watching it in real time. The Primetime maps, I'd like to say they're real time, but I kind of feel like they're a little bit behind. I'm not certain of that. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. There's just no way to know for sure. I just know that they move around really quickly. You'll see areas where there's prime time just popping up, and then it'll just move instantly. It'll move over to here. So it's very hard to predict. The one thing I do like about prime time, watching the maps, is that, and I have found that it can be pretty exact. So like if I'm looking at a prime time area, in my city, for instance, in Portland, Oregon, one will pop up between about Hawthorne and Belmont, which is a really good hotspot area for rides. And then they'll develop, you know, side by side. And so I'm looking at it and I'm going, okay, so if an order pops up between Hawthorne and Belmont, between 39th Avenue and 25th Avenue, I know that's going to be a primetime order and I should accept it. And that'll happen sometimes. I'll see it and I'll say, oh, it popped up in that area. I'm going to take it and I'm going to go. So generally, you don't want to be in the habit of turning away too many orders during a surge or prime time, though, if you're trying to hit your 90% acceptance rate to get your bonuses through Uber or Lyft. That's a big mistake you can make, because you can find yourself rejecting like 3 or 4 orders during a surge because you're waiting for that big money payout, which might not ever happen. So you can hurt your acceptance rate a lot during that time. So with prime time, that's my advice. You know, prime time works a little different than surge, where it says, you know, prime time will say 50%. So that means you're getting paid 50% more. Uber will say 1.5, which means the same thing. You're getting paid 50% more. It's a multiplier of 1.5 times what it would normally cost. Now, to the customers, that's kind of confusing. And it works to Lyft's advantage, because Lyft says, we're going to add 100% to your order. So the people say, oh, that's easy. That's adding the same price. So that's doubling my cost. And then they look at Uber and they're saying, oh, well, Uber is 2.0. So that means they're going to add 2 times the cost of my ride to my order. So it's going to be 3 times as much. So that's what a lot of customers think when they're looking at Lyft. And then they look over at Uber, they're thinking, oh my gosh, it's going to cost me so much more. But Uber, really, the 2 just means it's multiplying your order times 2. So that's something really ingenious that Lyft did with their Primetime, is they rigged it like that to where it would look like to passengers looking at both apps like they're going to get charged way more through Uber. So it's pretty interesting. So basically, when you're looking at that Primetime map, you know, it moves quickly, things can happen. What I prefer to do is to have the Uber and Lyft app open at the same time with the surge. So I'll have the Uber one open and I'll watch the Primetime map, because Primetime doesn't tell you if your fare is going to be a Primetime fare through Lyft. It just, whatever you get, it's whatever you get. But with Uber, it'll tell you what your order surge charge is. It'll say, Tony, 2.0 surge. So it's like, bam, I'll take that one. You know, even if I have a Primetime, or even if I have a Lyft order already in my phone, and then an Uber order pops through at like a huge surge cost, I'm like, okay, I'll take that and get rid of the the Lyft order, because I don't know what the Lyft order is going to pay. I don't want to take the gamble. Unless I'm trying to keep my acceptance rate up, then I'll stay with that. Or if I forgot to turn my app off for Uber and then the Uber order pops through. So that's it. As far as chasing Primetime and surge, anything else I need to cover? Yeah, don't stress when you're in these areas, because it's only a small portion of your day that there's going to be this whole Primetime surge thing going on. So it's just like, it's a small part of your day, and if you let it get to you and, you know, anger you, you're just going to be angry, and you're not going to have a pleasant experience doing Uber and Lyft. The real money, you know, just comes from patience and from waiting for those long distance orders and just digging for gold. You know, I like saying that in my videos, you got to dig for gold with this. And you don't get gold by just, you know, giving up. You got to keep going deeper. So that's my advice on chasing surges and Primetime with Uber and Lyft. And if there's anything I didn't cover that you want me to, just ask for it in the comments, and I will see you next time. I try to keep these short, but it's good information and the time goes quick. Have a great day.